Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox. This is Zivile, and today we're up for one more great pre-Christmas, pre-holidays episode. We're going to be joined by Nina Shariati, who is a global sustainability strategist, UN expert in transparency, and circular economy advocate. I think it's a perfect timing to have such episode, especially knowing about this whole Christmas and holiday madness. And yeah, Nina, with over 2 decades of experience in fashion and retail, has transformed how businesses integrate sustainability into their operations. From pioneering transparency initiatives at H&M to founding Circular Transparency, she is on a big mission to drive systemic change and make sustainability actionable for organizations worldwide. Let's dive into this holidays season-inspired episode where we're going to talk with Nina about sustainability, circularity, and her journey as a founder. Enjoy. Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Zivile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Hi, Nina. It's good to have you at Perception Paradox finally.
Yeah, finally, before the end of the year, even.
That's a perfect timing. How are you today?
I'm good. I had to leave my apartment because I'm sitting at this cafe shop, which I really like, close to where I am. So I have the type of bug that eats wool.
No way. Okay.
Yeah, and I love cashmere and wools. My carpet is wool, a lot of holes in my cashmere garments. That's how I found out. So now I have to invite it because they need to spray everything. So that's why I'm calling in from this coffee shop.
I'm so sorry to hear that. That's wild.
But I mean, I'm always like, it could have been worse. It could have been rats or something worse.
Yeah, well, at least you found it just before the holidays. That's great.
Yeah, that's why I'm wearing lipstick as a mood lifter.
That's good. I think that always helps. That's amazing. That's been quite a year, right? So I was very excited to this episode. I think I've never had anyone to dive deep into this whole sustainability and circularity. So it's going to be very interesting, I guess, both for me and both for the audience. But I think I like to start the conversations when we have a background and understanding where you're coming from. And you lived and worked across everywhere, basically, and so many different places. And I do recall how my interest was caught Bangladesh, China, South Korea, then you have Sweden, and all those crazy places, even maybe forgetting something. So how was it? And everything in between. So I'm very curious to learn how those diverse, both cultural and professional experience shaped you and your approach towards the world, sustainability, circularity.
Yeah, I was exposed to it quite early on. So I think, my experience with Korea was, I was an exchange student in South Korea, and this was long before Google or Google Translate or K-pop. It was like in 2005. So like this movie Lost in Translation, that was constantly the mode. And I was just, how old was I? 20 something. So I think that opened up my perspective. Also, I think as a lot of other people, I was always interested about the world and curious about the world. But that experience made me more hungry to explore more. It was such a wonderful experience in so many ways, in terms of how do you communicate? Where do you have your common grounds? Where are you different? What things do you take for granted? I don't think people I run into who have been working and lived in the same country or even in Europe or maybe even like Europe and US kind of environments, they don't understand how many point of references that we take for granted on everyday life, in our everyday communication, and how it shapes our reality. And that I think I'm very grateful of. I've been learning from my interactions with different cultures, with different colleagues, with different business partners out in the world, in cultures that are maybe a bit further away from the ones that we know the best here in West. And I have so many examples of what that could look like, if you want me to share.
Absolutely.
So one of my favorite examples is when I just moved to Bangladesh, and my role, I was 27 and I looked 20 like I am, and I was a woman. I kind of looked Bengali, but I wasn't. So I will pause all the challenges that comes with being a Muslim country, being a woman, being a young woman, etc. So my role was to lead the R&D and product development for ladies wear for like the Bangladesh, and increase the business through new development locally. So I would get like a deck of trends from head office in Sweden. So they would like design, and they would have their central, like their Stockholm-based meetings, and they would send it to us. And I was to like spread that information often into the suppliers. So we would we would start internally with the team that we worked with. We had our own team that were recruited for the brand, but then we met also with the suppliers. And many of the suppliers or the ones working with R&D didn't speak English. Okay. We'll also pause, like, how do you communicate? So I got this trend, and I stood in front of, let's say, 100 people. And I started by saying, today I'm going to present the trend for ladies wear for autumn of whatever year it was. The first trend is about cool ballerina. And then I went off by, like, say, sharing references from this movie and that movie, and this artist, that artist, fabrics, etc. And by then I was like 3 months into living in Bangladesh. So I could tell that I started losing them, like people. I was like, I felt that they weren't following for some reason. And then I just stopped, and I was like, okay, are you following? Do you know what? And I didn't get a response. So there is a lot of like not losing faith as well in Southeast Asian cultures. So I went back to the first slide, and I was like, how many people know what a ballerina is? Nobody knew what a ballerina was. Like, nobody ever seen a ballerina dance in a movie or anything like that. And then I was like, how many understands the concept of cool? And nobody knew that either. So just to give an example, when you're communicating something that can be, you feel like cool ballerina, everyone understands it, right? And if you're in fashion and design, you start getting those images, and like tutu, maybe with Dr. Martens, you know what I mean? It just comes together. But when you have zero reference to the words that you take for granted, where do you start? Where do you start explaining what the ballerina is and what cool is, to create a feeling of a collection that these majority men who have never been in a store are to help with creating? So that's just an example of,
it's very interesting.
when eye-opening moments where you're like, okay, I need to communicate in a totally different way. And I had other examples where we had like a fitting of a cocktail dress. They are Bengali men, and the women back then, this was in 2010, they have only seen women wearing saris and mostly traditional garments. So then they were like, when they were like, how do you use it? When do you use it? What is a cocktail? Like, what is that setting? And you rely on these people to actually help you develop product in terms of like the gaps in the communication and like reference background.
But Nina, how did you manage to bridge the gap? For example, in the same ballerina case. So you realize, okay, we don't really get what's happening. So you need to bridge the communication gap and find the way to explain. So how did that happen?
That's a good question. I think what I did was to like work with many more images and try to find a way to communicate that was beyond just the feeling, like creatives work with the feeling and use the references in that sense. So I had to be much more literal in terms of what we were supposed to do, like what type of fabric, what type of silhouette, and just show them, try to share as much references as I could access on internet. Okay, this is like a clip from a movie or a ballet, or it's much more educational, but also to be like really not relying on being references or abstract, or being very literal in that sense. And it wasn't, it still was like, it was still difficult to
Yeah,
reach
totally
all
can
the way.
imagine. I experienced that a lot in general situations when you travel, or I was at some point in Singapore on an accelerator. Also, when you try to communicate your understanding, point of view, and ideas, and you understand that we speak about the same things in such a different way. So it takes so much time to align, get your clarity and decision making on all those strategies. So that must have been interesting to have so
It
much
was
experience in
it was
different
it was
cultures.
a very, like, that year in Bangladesh was definitely interesting and an extremely learning experience for me. And I mean, if you think about it, we face that in our daily lives as well. How many times have you not, like, in English or your native language, spoken with someone, and then you realize, no, but we are not talking about the same thing. So the communication in that sense, I find very interesting. But at the same time, this is what's so interesting. At the same time that I felt we had so many different references, we also had so many commonalities. Like everyone, we are such social beings. Everyone still care about their families. Everyone still care about their community. Everyone, like, people still fall in love and have their hearts broken, or find a person being in a certain way or other. And I really love that we could still bond easily. We could still communicate easily around other topics where I thought it would be more difficult. I thought. So one of my learnings was both our differences in terms of like language barriers and cultural barriers, but also our similarities, that we are all still very social being. Majority still wants to do good. Majority wants to perform. Majority wants to just take care of their family and loved ones and have fun and laugh and feel like they belong, be respected. That's one of my fondest memories, in terms of that you actually sometimes, even with people like the suppliers who didn't spoke the language, you could still find the way to laugh about things, because you saw something funny from the same perspective.
Yeah. But tell me, how did sustainability and all this circular economy come into your life? Because you've been in this ride for quite some time, no?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think I've had it with me from my childhood, in terms of human rights have always been important at home, like having a just and being kind to people and not judging people based on their income, etc. I mean, just being a decent person. I think my parents did a great job in terms of raising us. And then growing up in Sweden, and living close to the ocean, having access to nature, I think it just came naturally, in terms of, I mean, it's wonderful. I have a very strong connection to nature, and just the thought of that being ruined or not be around it's heartbreaking for me. So I think I've always had it with me, but there was a moment, where I think it was during my years abroad, actually, in Bangladesh and China, I started to become more and more aware. And then there was this moment where I just become so aware of how my action had direct consequences negatively to nature. And this was somewhere. So I think I started more actively working with sustainability, let's say shifting to better option in terms of material use, like recycled material already in 2014, 15, I think. And then I've just built on that journey. But I think one thing was when you're at suppliers, when you're in Bangladesh and you understand, you see the industry, not just your own, but all the industry, how it impacts life, both from a socioeconomical perspective. So you can have conversations about minimum wages, etc., which I think is fair and you have to have it. But it's also important to understand that the industry is like textile industry, which is normally the first industry that moves into developing countries. It helps develop that country drastically. So Bangladesh is in a totally different place, socioeconomical wise, thanks to the textile industry from a social perspective. Women were the ones getting the job. Women, when they have the money, what they do is they invest in the children and the family. While when men get the money, they invest in themselves. So they spend it on themselves. So when textile industry provides job opportunities for women, women educate their children, which leads to less, then the whole society thrives from a social perspective. And then on the other side, if you go to Bangladesh, you can't help but see the water pollution in the country and how the environmental impact of the industries in the country. So it's two-sided, and that's maybe what is also challenging in terms of working with sustainability, that it's never black and white. It's always some shade of gray.
There are always two sides of the coin.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I guess my sense of responsibility towards sustainability has always been there. But there was this point of time where I was like, when I took this action, I actually ruined a part of that ancient forest in Indonesia. It was on me. And I think a lot of times we in Europe make those decisions, but very few times we understand the consequences of it. And I think I had the, let's say, privilege of seeing my consequences up front to really understand, like, okay, when you do this, it results in this. How do you feel about that? Can you live with that? Can you live with gaining, maybe increasing profits or the margin with few percentiles while leaving a part of the forest damaged that will never.
That's wild. Well, transparency is a cornerstone, right? And the key of driving this agenda. Do you think we as humanity, as businesses, as individuals are transparent enough when it comes to contributing to the sustainability agenda?
Feel like it's a very angled question.
No, so maybe what's the key of
Yes, I feel we
transparency?
are very transparent and everyone is telling exactly how it is.
It is controversial, right? I mean, yeah,
The answer is no, we are not
yeah,
transparent.
maybe.
And I think,
Yeah, go ahead.
so I think there's like, when we're talking about transparency, there's a lot of like, there's this mix of transparency, traceability, what's what. So, and it's easily mixed. So, and also like transparency, a lot of many times businesses, they do know themselves, and sometimes they don't know either. But for the sake of our conversation, so when I talk about transparency, it's about information that businesses share externally in an honest manner. So it's just telling things as they are. If it's good, you tell it. If it's bad, you tell it. And then traceability is more to say, okay, this product moved from A to B to C to D.
Okay.
So just to make it a bit easy in terms of what we talk about.
And yeah, go ahead.
The answer is no, we are not trustworthy.
But then let's say for anyone who is working for some businesses, organizations, so what practical steps can an organization do actually to embed that whole sustainability agenda and be more transparent when it comes to the communication and their basically sustainability agenda?
So I think there's one part that the EU legislations are pushing quite a lot about creating a harmonization in terms of transparency. So you have CSRD, you have the digital product passport, you have the taxonomies, etc. Majority are focusing on pushing industries like textiles and retail to be more transparent. And I would say there are a couple of different things to think about when going forward with transparency. One is the data and data quality. Start with, okay, do you as a company know where your products are coming from and whether or not the data is reliant? And this is before you can even be transparent. So you need to start by having that understanding. And then one part is just to be the reporting part that you kind of need to comply with. And from my understanding, there are quite a lot of companies who haven't even started, which is worrisome for them. But the third part is from a brand value perspective. Like, who do you want to be? Communication and how brands are communicating with their customers is how they create a relationship, right? So transparency is it's not the only one, but it's a strong key and enabler in terms of building that relationship, whether it's your customers, your investors, your partners, your stakeholders, even the critical NGOs. You need to have a strategy around that. You need to know what information is needed for each and every stakeholder and to provide that in the way they want to receive it. So the way, even something as simple as let's say a product is better than the other product. The way the investor wants to have that information is not the same as the customer would like to have it. And you could also argue even within the customer range, that could be different. If you have a expert or a mature customer versus someone who is just a little bit interested, then you need to adjust communication quite a lot. So I would say understand your data, understand the legislation, start internally, but then start think about what type of brand do you want to be and how does your stakeholders need to receive that information.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last part is something that I'm starting to see more and more companies become aware of, is that let's say even some of the legislations don't apply you, right? Because you're maybe a smaller company or maybe you don't even sell in Europe. Say you only sell in US. I mean, all the other brands will communicate that. And when the big brands are communicating that, what image will you create when you're not doing it? Do you see my point?
Mm-hmm.
So it's also that angle of competition advantage that you might be losing. When others are providing a service or a data and you're not doing it, how do you hold up?
Yeah. And so what about all those very ambitious net zero targets? Brands are communicating that loud and yeah, we can reach that by 2030, 20, whatever, it was 2025. There were some brands that were highlighting that. But when we look into this whole supply chain, right, decarbonizing the Asian supply chain, for example, it's a massive challenge. So my question would be, from your experience, what you have observed working with huge brands like, let's say, H&M and traveling the world, consulting so many different companies, what can we do to bridge the gap? And is it even feasible?
is even bridgeable.
Even if, yeah, even exactly.
So I think, so here's the thing, there are two sides to it. So what we see quite a lot of, unfortunately, however you want to formulate it, a lot of brands that are silently like removing their previous commitments, like the big commitments, where you're gonna get zero or even climate positive, or we're gonna make sure, I don't know, 30% of our bottles are being refilled by 2030. They are quietly being moved out. And that, as a person who have been inside and also like seen other brands internally, a lot of those targets were set without anyone knowing how to reach them. And one reason to set them was to create push to move the industry forward and the brand themselves forward. And in many ways, they, to be honest, I think sometimes we forget where we were um, in terms of understanding, knowledge, insights, science-based data. So many of those targets were set by people who had zero clue of how to reach them. And it was more like, okay, we set it and then we figured out. We have 10 years. How hard could it be? And as things evolve and as also like sustainability, the whole area is becoming more science-based. So when you start understanding and science is applied and you understand it better and better, and you realize how hard that is and what it actually takes to become carbon neutral throughout your supply chain, scope 1, 2, and 3, then reality hits. And I think that's also why some are pulling back, unfortunately, from it. It would be, I would rather have them say, we set this target, we worked hard on it. Again, with transparency and how you create trust. We won't be able to reach it because of X, Y, and Z. But we are creating, we think the way forward is this one. That would be, that's how you communicate to your, it's like any relationship, right? I mean, if I plan to do, let's just say you and me, we are supposed to do something together, and then I just ghost you on the day, then say, and let's say I had a, yeah, something came. You would rather know, okay, I wouldn't be able to do it because of a thing, and I would create more trust towards you if I did that, instead of just
But when we
not show up.
when we look
But
into nowadays
unfortunately,
world, that is happening actually,
yeah, that is
and
happening. And I
that's
think they're
crazy.
having maybe they should work on their communication advisor strategy. But yeah, going back to that, yeah, it's very difficult, and there are a lot of targets that are being put out there currently, and unfortunately, everyone loves them. Everyone loves the solution, but very few, if any, wants to pay for it, and it's a lot is being pushed down the supply chain towards the suppliers to take action. And unfortunately, what we see is that, okay, even if they would take that cost, I mean, they're still for profit. They can't just absorb it. So when they even increase the margins slightly, then the brands come back and same brands are pushing down the prices because the KPIs are high. So there are huge challenges in that area.
Okay. But then we have also technology coming to that area to help us, which is AI, right? And it seems like AI is driving agent and advancements in all the different areas of technology, including circular economies. But then again, if we go into the technology, right, we already spoke a bit, it's also energy intensive. So we kind of get into this paradox. We have technology for good, but then it's also kind of energy intensive, so not that good for the planet. But
Yeah.
how do you see the role of artificial intelligence that came into all the sustainability and circularity area?
I mean,
What are
yeah,
the advancements with it?
I mean, it's definitely a double-edged sword in a way. It's a fantastic tool. I mean, I love AI. I'm sure everyone who has had any interaction with them, with it, just, it blows your mind in a way. So it doesn't take, and we haven't even seen the full capacity of it. So the greatest minds compare it to the biggest discovery we have ever made in terms of everything. So with any great discoveries, it could be used for good or it could be weaponized. And to make sure it's not being weaponized, you need legislation and guardrails. And we definitely need more of it. And we need to do it in a faster pace than we have done. So I don't think AI is going anywhere. It's out there. I think it's impossible. It's unimaginable to think that we are all of a sudden going to say, oh no, what? We didn't think this through. We're just going to pull it back. But the negative sides are absolutely the energy intensity and the water use, the risk of biodiversity in the areas where you have the data centers, where the things are getting heated up. So those exist, and we need to understand how we address it in the best way. There are more and more conversations. There are a lot of big tech companies who have actually said, you know what, we said we were going to be a net zero, but with AI, we won't be. And we need to figure out how we do that in the best way. So that's one side. But if we are all aware of that and we need to figure that one out. We don't have it right now. The positive sides with AI is that you can apply it to so many areas. Just operational efficiency is one area. Even if you're not, we are far from having a full circular ecosystem and a circular business model, and basically designing a product for longevity and use it as much as possible. And then you create business models that prolong its lifetime either through resale, mending, upcycling, and when you're no longer use it, you recycle it easily, because in the early stage you design it through recyclability into new products. And along the way you reduce waste from energy, resources, etc. That's the full circular economy. We are far from it, and certain industries further from it. It's something less than, if you look at textiles, something less than like 1% that is from a garment to a new garment that is being recycled. So it's a lot of like downcycling in terms of you shred the garment into car fillers or cleaning cloths, stuff like that. But that going from one garment to another garment, we are far from it. So that's its reality. But if we look at the linear model, which is how everyone is following right now, AI has a capacity to actually make that much more efficient in terms of reducing waste. One area where AI becomes very effective is to make sure the demand and supply are more aligned. Right now, it's something around 30-40% extra garments being produced to make sure you find what the customer wants and needs where they are. But with help of AI, you can reduce that drastically. So that's one impactful usage of AI. Other ways of usage of AI is to really collect a lot of data and really understand where are the impacts, where do we have emission, and need to more focus in terms of addressing climate, negative climate impact or water usage or chemicals. So that whole approach into gathering data in an easy way, showcasing it, AI is doing fantastic things already now. So you could use AI in so many different ways already now for sustainability. And there are startups who are looking into it and create really interesting solutions. The question is, are they being backed with financing? So sometimes it's not necessarily only in terms of, can we use it? Yes, we can. But are we scaling it? For scalability, you need leadership and vision and the team, but then you need financing. And that's something we don't really see.
But we do see the focus on the also climate and sustainability startups. More and more funds are trying to do that. EU is trying to put out some grants, but we can talk about that. Is there enough capital allocated or not yet? My question would be before the capital allocation, well, I've experienced and I've noticed the challenge of what is real, what is not, right? The greenwashing at some point became also part of the game. Asking you as an expert, how can we identify the real impact startup? And to maybe there are some tools or some kind of strategies you use, like what is a real impact and where do you see that, oh, just a greenwashing marketing tool?
I mean, there are some tools out there. So the challenge is there's no one great tool. Like there's not one standard you can follow. It's not like this is how you tell the temperature in Celsius. There's not one measurement like that. So there's like LCAs. I'm sure you heard of it. Then there's this IRIS plus that many use to evaluate impact startups. But the challenge is, I think one of the biggest challenge is that because there's still so many, like that standard is lacking, a lot of investors and the ones sitting on capital and directing it rely on the tools. Because one majority of them have never worked in that specific industry, especially if you're fund or VC who invest in multiple different industries, it's very difficult to do. So majority they come some into VC. They have only worked with investments. They've never worked with the specific industry in itself. And then majority of them, they don't really understand sustainability. I've talked to the ones claiming they understand sustainability, but they feel sustainability is everything and nothing at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the biggest challenge is that the ones who are investing, they have a big gap of knowledge in terms of how does this specific solution create the impact for this specific industry. And for that, the best way is to bring in third party, bring in experts who can help you with those evaluations, because it's so many case by case. Sustainability, as I mentioned for you, it could be such a complex and wicked problem. So you might think you're solving something on the environmental side, but you're creating a problem on the social side, or you're creating something on the social side or environment side, but it doesn't balance up with the business model. You need to bring in those experts to help you with. You can't only rely on the data, especially when it's not as simple as like, we're going to save water or we're going to take CO2 from air and just put it into like lock it down.
Okay.
When it gets into like specific product type or business model, then you need to bring in experts.
And you're one of the experts. And before working for many brands, you went to have your own journey, right? Female entrepreneur and sustainability. How was it for you so far? Was it the linear way, or what kind of challenges were along the way? It's kind of interesting, and I would say a growing field you're in.
Yeah, I mean, historically, it's known that it's easier for female startups with minority backgrounds to start something.
Is it?
No, just joking. It's majority of time I love it. I love that I can explore my full potential and put my ideas into action and feel like I'm part of, at least working hard to be part of the solution. So in many ways, I love it, but it is a huge challenge. It's just, you read a lot of things about how the world looks or how it is for startups. So now I'm not even asking for funding at this point, but like the fact that female founded companies are given less than 2% of all VCs, even in Sweden. It's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like I start facing those things. And there's also something about the whole idea of what a leader looks like. You know, we have as a society created this kind of like, it needs to be preferably a tall man, preferably from a social economical background and certain look. And when you don't have that, comes with certain challenges. You need to have different strategies, or at least be more privileged. What has been your experience as a female founder? I have to ask you.
I'm not sure.
How do you
Interesting.
find it?
I guess it depends on the environment. 50-50, I would say.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find that when it comes to fun conversations, everyone is very open, but particular type of the players, when it comes to a serious conversation and you want to talk business, it becomes quite challenging because of my super energetic personality, not everybody takes you seriously. And I'm like, okay, why is that? And then you could start looking into the situation. Sometimes there are cultural differences. Sometimes it's the age difference and someone coming from more conservative background. And usually if you look into the leading industry players, they are coming with the already way more experienced conservative backgrounds. And yeah, sometimes I find that they don't treat you seriously, and I find it hilarious. I'm like, what are you talking? If you're smiling and just talking, it does not mean that you're not serious. So
yeah, it's something about the military. I mean, it comes a lot from the military, right?
could be.
So but that's how it is. Like the suit in itself, the men who go to work wearing the suit is a uniform. There's like a square you need to fit in historically to be seen as a certain type of person. But it's so funny because a lot of this whole notion of men are being judged on their potential, while women are judged on what they have achieved. And I struggle with, I want to be like, okay, I'm here, I'm saying I'm doing this, let's have a dialogue and we can see but so many times, even like, I'm aware that I look younger. So I need to say how old I am, or at least say, and this year I did this, and then I did this.
But then nobody can connect, and then everyone trying to guess how old you is. You've done just so many things. I had these conversations too.
So then it's like yet another conversation. But it's unfortunately more often than another, I find myself needing to say, okay, I'm not saying that I can do this and I can support you just because I woke up and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I have done it. I have so many years of experience. You're talking about the challenges of Bangladesh. I lived in Bangladesh. Let's start there. I mean, then it gets a bit like funny in that.
Yeah, 100%. But I feel that it's changing already. I mean, the generations are changing, the mindsets, and the conversation is out there. So yes, we're talking. Of course, not everybody is still open, and it will take some time for the mindset shift. I don't know how long, but I feel like it is shifting. And the approach I took when it comes to my work I do, from media to events, etc. I don't know. At the end of the day, we attract what we radiate, and the right people still come to your network, your circle. And I do believe it's just gonna elevate with the time.
I think I so too. And can I just say one more thing?
Go ahead.
I think I'm definitely aware, and I've been giving talks about diversity, inclusivity again. I'm aware of how hard or easy it is depending on many different things. But to be honest, I think my route of success is not think about it. Like leave it be. Like just show up. And just be the best me and focus on my vision and move forward. That I think has been the best tool for me, so to say. I don't necessarily think it's helpful to constantly go around and be aware of. That's not something for me. At least it hasn't worked for me.
I think that's the wrong energy. You are entering the environment and the conversation. If you're entering with a mind that, they're not going to treat me seriously, they won't. Nobody will. No matter the gender, no matter the age, no matter the views, but you just come and you do your things. So I like what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all about the trust, confidence, and doing the right things.
Yeah, and trust and confidence. And I think at least I'm sure you feel this as well. I've shown to myself, and I'm the toughest critic to myself. I've shown for myself so many times that I can do something. So that gives me confidence, and everyone else, either they see it or they don't. And if they
Exactly.
sorry for
It's
them.
their loss.
Yeah.
No, that's a very good point. It's always very important to enter whatever you are entering in life with the right approach, mindset, and not jinxing around with the things that is also part of this kind of surreal reality. Because the way we approach ourselves, the way we look into ourselves, the way we treat ourselves, the way other people see that. So it's an important topic that we have to talk about that, but that's not the way you have to enter into the room and into the business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing a lot. I think entrepreneurship, it's fun, and especially when you start really, doing that and get out of the regular corporate cycles. Yeah, you really learn to ride the roller coaster, no? And to deal with your emotions.
Waking up and regret all your decisions.
Yeah.
And then the next day you're like, no, actually, this is fun. I'm moving forward. I'm doing something interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think one thing that I want to highlight on and emphasize, I think this word of sustainability, end of the day, what I work with is business strategies. That's what I work with. But it's business strategies in a perspective of taking in broader opportunity and broader risk management in that sense. So then this word of sustainability is put into it. And I think we are moving towards that. We're moving to a point where more and more organizations and people understand that this area is business strategy, but from a more complex perspective based on the complex world that we are living in. It's fun to see that that's happening. And a lot of companies are actually like making the sustainability team expert, in turning them into like a smaller expert team, and like moving a lot of actionable headcounts into the business because it's business strategy.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So talking about business strategies, so for anyone, businesses or maybe also individuals who are aiming to align more closer with sustainability goals, what would be, let's say, 3 to practical steps they can take right now to really create a meaningful impact?
There are a couple of things. One thing is knowledge and understanding and like really learning. I think many people think, oh, it's like materials. No, but really get into it and understand what it means. If you want to work with it, or if you want to align yourself with sustainability, either it's like ESG legislations or just thing in general, make sure you understand it and collect a lot of information and data. The second one is map that knowledge into your business. Not everything makes sense for all the industries. So then how does what you do align with the different terms of sustainability? How does it translate? If it's under social matter, like what are relevant for your brand or industry, environmental, etc. And then the legislations, of course, are really important. And also like, what does your customers asking for? Who are your customers and where are they? So I would say that, but then also like, what type of brand do you want to create? Who do you want to be as a leader? That's a really important questions. Every CEO or a founder or anyone who is in the position of making those decisions needs to kind of reflect on it. We have a lot of legislations around reporting and ESG right now, but that's not enough. That's not what will take us to Paris agreements or decarbonization goals. More than anything, we need value-driven, courageous leaders who have vision. And I think you need to have that. Otherwise, where you're going to be.
Thanks for sharing. So, Nina, we're approaching towards the end, and I have this tradition in the podcast that I ask my guests to leave us together with the listeners with a thought to ponder through that day. So what would be your question, thought for us to think about and reflect?
I think as we are approaching Christmas and the craziness around gift giving, I really want us to think about how do we showcase our care and love to the ones we love. Is it another sweater or is it something more meaningful? I think these maybe seen as small questions are extremely important to reflect over, because it kind of, when summarized, it leads us to the problems we are facing. So I would like us to really take a moment and think about, do I need to shop more, or should I do it in a different way?
Perfect timing, perfect question. How can people find you online? What's the best channel?
LinkedIn is good.
Okay, we're gonna leave the
Through our
links.
webpage, circulartransparency.com, we have email address or info@circulartransparency.com. I'm sure you will add all of this, right?
I'll add it. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. So Nina, thank you
So,
so
yeah.
much for joining and for sharing your journey and more about the sustainability and the circular economy. It was really interesting to hear your such a global approach. And yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
So it was a pleasure for me as well. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone who joined us today. And what can we say? Happy holidays. Have a great celebration. And see you in 1 week. Bye.
Bye.